Back to Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Nothing but truth.
On AFR Talk.
Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk. Bottom of the hour, Ryan Morrow, National Security Advisor to the Clarion Project. He'll be with us, and then we are going to take your phone calls in the last segment of the hour regarding going to Syria. Would you vote for a resolution to support military action in Syria? Now, we are shifting gears only slightly to a domestic issue, and that would be Obamacare. Crane, snoozer, we get it. Yeah, they missed their deadlines, 56% of them. We get it. They're not ready. We get it. It's 100% cost overrun. In essence, they missed their cost goal by 100% because they messed with the numbers. They played with the formula going into the CBO. And so they manipulated and double counted. And now all of the things that you all on the right have said are coming true. But what about the people that supported Obamacare? What about the thug named Richard Trumka, AFL-CIO? I say that because, you know what, I'm not going to play the game. I'll call somebody a name when they deserve it. Check out his record and violence. Michelle Malkin does a great job of detailing it. But if somebody's a thug and they do not apologize, they do not make good, there's no contrition, but all of a sudden they're in power because the left's in power because, they're unions, and we got to make the machine go around because it produces the cash that gets the propaganda out to influence elections. Yes, unions, Democratic Party, and government, big government, with special cutouts, which the union got, right? It got an exemption, and then, well, things went a little awry. They didn't read the fine print. They were very big supporters of the Obamacare, but things have gone a little sideways when it comes to the tax, 40% tax on the Cadillac plans, when they are looking at employers cutting back to 30 hours a week, and therefore those employers are going to be exempt from having to provide the insurance and are going to put people into the exchanges. Those people will have to pay for that, and they will not qualify for subsidies. That's a problem. Richard Trumka's understanding that problem, and he addressed this earlier, and here is Richard Trumka talking about tweaking the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare. Roll it.
The Affordable Care Act does need some modifications to it because as it does right now, what's happening is you have employers that the law says if your employees work 30 hours or more a week, you got to give them health care. So they're restructuring their workforce to give workers 29 and a half hours so they don't have to provide them health care.
Yeah, and if those employees actually get subsidies, it's going to cost, I read, was it $50 billion? Yeah, something along those lines, between 20 and 50 billion more dollars. I mean, more cost overrun, obviously. This is all designed. Take the profit out of healthcare, kill the industry, go to single payer. That's the game plan. It's incrementalism. You all know this. And what that means to you is you're going to have to pay for two health plans, your private plan and the government health plan. Understand there is rationing, and check out Sally Pipe. She writes about her mother dying because of socialized care. There are consequences. And yes, in essence, we have death panels. So this is the truth coming down. And people are like, oh, really? Well, what is Richard Trump going to do? He's going to go, and he is going, and he has gone to the White House, and he's looking for a little revision, a little change, a little special exemption, and a little modification in the law. You know what? We have a process for that. It's actually, you're supposed to go through Congress and pass the law. It's supposed to be, pass the bill, signed into the law by the president if he chooses to do so. It's not tweaking an existing law and forcing certain parts of it. At the top of the hour, we will speak with Hans von Spakovsky about this trend in the Obama administration and the consequences of this trend, what it leads to, and where it is hurting the very people that President Obama and the left say they are trying to help. Now, this is not some kind of sinister move. This is just reality and human nature, and it doesn't evolve. You know, we're all fallen, and human nature does not evolve. The left believes it does, that we can get to another place, because how else would you give away your power to those in government thinking they have wings and a halo. They know what they're doing. Ideologically, they believe in big government statism. That makes them better and understanding. They believe government can work, not recognizing the perverse incentives, as our founders did, when it came to power, votes, and the Treasury. Very simple. You know this. I'm pointing this out again because it needs to be said, because all of a sudden we're looking at 7.4% unemployment. People are saying this is the new normal. I guess it's better than 9. But if you look at the real unemployment, with the labor force being what it was in 2008, we're looking at about 11% unemployment. And if you adjust demographically for people who would have left the workforce and age-wise, then you go down to 9 or 10%, but still 9 or 10%. Then you got 14.3% or 14%, and the U6 unemployment, part-time workers who would like to work full-time, and those that have left the workforce. I mean, you got a problem here. Big-time problem. And somehow we're talking about Syria, and that's very important, but so is Benghazi, so is the IRS, and, well, what the DOJ is doing in Louisiana in the form of education, denying freedom of choice for education in Louisiana, is also something that we should talk about. We will, with Hans von Spakovsky. What about the gridlock, Crane? Well, I'm glad you addressed that. President Clinton did last week in his MLK speech, and here's one of the things he had to say. And as what he has been described as the first black president, I don't like playing the game, but that's what he was described as, or called. I think blanking on that particular group or person who said that. But he said, you know what? Dr. King would not like all the whining about gridlock. Roll it.
Dr. King's dream of interdependence, his prescription of wholehearted cooperation across racial lines, they ring as true today as they did 50 years ago. Oh, yes, we face terrible political gridlock now. Read a little history. It's nothing new. Yes, there remain racial inequalities in employment, income, health, wealth, incarceration, and in the victims and perpetrators of violent crime. But we don't face beatings, lynchings, and shootings for our political beliefs anymore. And I would respectfully suggest that Martin Luther King did not live and die to hear his heirs whine about political gridlock. It is time to stop complaining and put our shoulders against the stubborn gates holding the American people back.
Now, the Congressional Black Liberal Caucus, and years back, called him the first black president. That's who said that. Wanted to make sure we got that one out. Part two, President Clinton speaking to what kind of environment we live in now. Well, we have a lot of people, well, relatively, in the stories we hear, are being killed because of the color of their skin. But now it's because they're white, which is just as odious as it were when it was if somebody were black. Sick, isn't it? Just want to reference that. Make sure the stories get out there because they are happening, and it has been happening with mob violence. I digress. We go to President Clinton talking about gridlock, and, hey, this has happened. He was very good because he had a Republican Congress, a very conservative Republican Congress, dragging him kicking and screaming at times to tax cuts and welfare reform, and we also had deregulation, or not trying to regulate the internet, so you had an incredible explosion during that time. That's the real Clinton success. It's not the tax increase. Please don't fall for that lie, because it's not only a myth, it's a lie. Look at what it did to economic growth overall, and look at where we were in the recession. A lot of content, I know, but I got Monday and Tuesday all in me, and I just got to get it out. Now, here is PBS and Judy Woodruff and Gwen Ifill. Gwen Ifill wrote a book about the president, and they're interviewing him on MLK and the state of racism, as well as gridlock in Congress. Roll it.
And we have increasing inequality in the society, and we've got to do something about that, and we can do something about it as long as we keep our eye on the ball.
And let me just pick up on that, because you did tie Dr. King's vision to your own agenda, and you've been able to help the country in many ways. We didn't go into the economic abyss after the financial collapse. Wall Street's booming, corporations are making great profits, but as you pointed out today, average wages, the gap between the wealthy and those who are not wealthy, has never been bigger than it is today. The wages, especially of African Americans, haven't improved. Mr. President, how much does it weigh on you that your policies haven't made more of a difference in those areas?
You said in your speech, you talked about the arc of the moral universe, quoting the moral arc of the universe, quoting Dr. King. And you said it doesn't bend on its own.
Yeah.
I interviewed Taylor Branch, the civil rights historian, for part of our series in the March of Washington yesterday. And one of the things he said was that you are a victim of partisan racial gridlock. That's the way he put it. And you talked a moment ago about that a little bit. I wonder whether you think that's true. And if so, what, if anything, the first African American president can do to break through that kind of motivated gridlock?
The reason there is gridlock is because you have the House Republicans who are elected by Tea Party groups that have said no more, we like the rule of law and the Constitution, and spending our way does not ever improve the economy. By the way, people are really excited about him saving us from the economic abyss, which his ideology and his party led to. Now, Republicans are also a part of it, but remember President Bush, 17 communications to Congress for reform on Fannie and Freddie. Another point, this is always looking for a fall person, somebody to blame, gridlock, why don't they all just get along? The president has to lead. I think we all want that. Unfortunately, he hasn't. AFR Talk.